Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Got whacked tonight. Good evening, everyone. It is December 5th, 2024, and this is the monthly meeting of the Fitchburg Transportation and Transit Commission on a special date, 1 week early. Let the record show that all commissioners are here except for Elizabeth Ward, who is not attending with excuse. First order of business is to approve the agenda. Entertain a motion.
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Bill and Logan, is there any discussions, additions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next are the minutes. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as submitted, except for the starting time was 6:30, not 5:30.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rick and Micah. Any other changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes with that one change, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are passed unanimously as amended. That brings us, let the record show there were no members of the public on Zoom or in the room for agenda item 2. Number 5, staff report, Ross.
All right. So just to follow up on some items that were talked about at the last council meeting, and we've talked about this here. I got some more detailed information on the Madison Metro Transit service disruptions that have been occurring over the last couple of months. So annually, the city of Fitchburg pays for 15,941 fixed route hours per year. That ends up being 2,657 hours per month. We pay $136 per hour for each of those hours. That adds up to $2,167,976 total that we pay for fixed route bus service. The missed trips from September equated to 10 trips, 1 hour and 55 minutes of time. That's 0.07% of our monthly hours. And then October, 68 trips were missed. That added up to 6 hours and 43 minutes. That's 0.25% of our monthly hours. And the total reimbursement amount, it won't actually be a reimbursement because of how our contract works, but it will be a reduction in our cost for a future year. Will total 8 hours and 38 minutes times the $136 an hour is $1,176.40. Questions on that?
Just one.
I first wanted to say I attended the council meeting and was grateful to have Metro Transit come and answer some of those questions. One of the data points that you kind of just reminded me of here is when they had talked about the impacts and described it in terms of the that small percentage. I wonder if there's a way to quantify it differently, whether that's on our end or asking Metro for those numbers of how many trips that is. And I'm thinking of if it's the route B where it runs more frequently than 65, like if let's say 20% of the 65 routes were canceled for an entire month, are those impacts being felt kind of more one place or the other? So
I do have information per route. I just didn't want to get into that much detail summarizing that, so I can send out a follow-up email with that statistic.
Okay, I just was curious too as to are some parts of the community feeling the impacts more than others, or I should say probably felt. I certainly haven't noticed any impacts of late on the 65.
You would like a metric that would more reflect the inconvenience that an individual who has to get to work and doesn't have his bus, like the number of rides lost that would normally be on those runs.
And especially when they accidentally canceled the last run of the 65 for the day. So like if you miss it, you can't even wait a half hour or whatever and get on the next bus.
Thank you both for putting that much more eloquently than was half formed in my mind.
You're good.
I just have a question about terminology on that, because you referred to the hours that we pay for as fixed route hours. When we were looking at paratransit, there was a distinction between fixed routes, which meant all day long, 7 days a week, I believe, on the federal transportation site, and us having 65 and 75, which we didn't count as fixed routes because they didn't run that continuously. So is there just a difference in terminology of fixed route between what we have there in our contract and what are actually considered fixed routes?
Yes, I believe you're right. I'd have to check ADA to see what terminology they use, but I think you're right that they say fixed routes.
Okay.
But I think that's in our contract with Metro Transit, we used fixed routes to refer to one thing, which is all of our actual bus routes.
Okay.
And then I believe
Fixed route
in
as opposed to
ADA,
paratransit.
correct, yes.
Yeah.
We pay more to Metro Transit than that 2 million number I said, because we also pay more than that for paratransit.
Oh, okay.
So that's the distinction I was making.
Wasn't there verbiage in the MPO contract that says all day fixed routes are eligible for
That might be
paratransit?
true.
Yeah, all day, every day.
Yeah, but that is the distinction between the two, where we get paratransit versus not, is basically all day versus part of the day.
Okay.
And they're all-day fixed routes and part of the day or peak-only fixed routes, but they're both fixed routes because they follow the same route all the time.
Right,
Whereas
well, that was
paratransit-
what I was
Yeah.
pursuing before in terms of talking about our access to paratransit, which we were told we did not have access to for the 65 and 75 routes because they were not fixed routes according to ADA.
Yeah, they are fixed routes, but they're not all-day, everyday fixed routes. Now, when I looked at the ADA spec that was referenced in some link or something and read it, it did not say all day, every day.
Right.
And the implication that we got was that meant that paratransit should be available in the 65 and 75 areas during the times that they are running.
Right.
And it appears that they're not, and it appears that that's a local interpretation of federal policy and not something coming from Washington.
Okay.
But what do you think, Ross?
I would have to
Yeah,
follow
that's
up on that. I don't know whether that's local or
national,
national.
legal. All right, but back to your report.
So another follow-up on an old item, the RRFB on the Badger State Trail. Our council members and people who are at BPW might know this. but the Outlot 5 electrical easement, that's Outlot 5 and Crescent Crossing, was referred out at the 11/26 council meeting. It went to Board of Public Works, was approved, will go to plan on 12/17, and then we'll go back to council for final approval on January 14th of 2025. Once we have that easement, then MG&E can install an electrical service that will power the lights and the RRFB, the street lights and the RRFB on Lacey Road near Seminole Highway.
Any idea, Ross, what the holdup was? I understand the need the easement, but when did they come to learn that they needed that easement? And why are we, we've been complaining about the bags over the buttons, for 9 months. Why wasn't the easement referred out last spring? Do you know?
So part of it is that the metering equipment for the streetlights and the RRFB was not available to install until, I believe, May or June of this year. And MG&E doesn't like to install services until you have the equipment that you're hooking the service up to, which is the meter. We probably could have gotten the easement before that and been ready to go. But I requested the easement once we were ready to install the meter and the actual lights. And that's when the delays with MG&E started, I guess you could say.
Okay.
So
did they have to do some engineering to figure out exactly what they needed, or surveying, or?
From my understanding, that work was done fairly early. I'd had preliminary conversations with them that said, oh, we'll bring power right here. And then it took
More of a
8 months to get the final easement document.
Okay, so more of a black hole inside MG&E that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad that it's progressing.
If the general public wanted an estimated time when that would be operational, what would we say? The future.
I would say February of 25 at this point.
Are they gonna do horizontal drilling?
I'm not sure what their install method will be. That's their usual method. So
I just wonder if we'd have to rip up our new path.
no, I don't believe we do.
Very good.
And then just a brief update on bus rapid transit funding. In March of 2024, and this is just for context in response to some questions I've been getting from kind of the public and other staff about the new federal government administration. The FTA recommended in March of 2024 to appropriate $118 million to the Madison Bus Rapid Transit project, the north-south portion. So that funding is recommended. It has not been passed by Congress. From my very preliminary understanding, it's kind of tied up in some of the federal government spending package talks that are going on right now to, keep the federal government open or not. That's all part of that.
So it can't be in the continuing resolution that's for the fumes that we're running on at the moment.
Our current agreement for funding is scheduled to be signed in the third quarter of 2026. The new administration could, in theory, reduce that funding, but with the way it was recommended, that would be unprecedented. It's never been done before, even the last time this administration came in. A more likely worst case scenario than losing funding would be some construction delays, like from 28 to 2030-ish. But we still need to move forward with the BRT project to meet all of the project readiness criteria so that we're ready for the funding when it's supposed to be available. So that's just an update. I don't have a ton more information. Honestly, a lot of it is pretty far over my head in congressional spending packages. So,
Wait, you don't have a direct line to most of Congress?
unfortunately not.
118 million represent in terms of the total project cost?
90%, I believe.
And that covers construction of stations and
it's
charging
Capital costs, right?
Yeah, I believe that's capital costs.
and more buses.
No,
No.
we have all the buses that we're getting, I think.
Yes. But I believe those buses were purchased with federal funds. Just
They were,
the
but
last
a different
time.
kind of grant, not the small starts.
Yeah.
Yep, and one of the advantages we have is that the north-south route runs concurrent with the east-west route through the middle of the city of Madison, so that a lot of the north-south route is already built. Yay for that.
So that's my staff report.
Any questions for staff? All right then.
Jamestown? Just a high level?
Yeah.
Why might it taken so long?
So the Jamestown Quarry development, that's basically on the corner of Fitchburg Road and McKee, the northwest corner, for those unfamiliar. It also wraps around Fitchburg, where Fitchburg goes to the north. Basically, there's a multifamily development on the north side of Fitchburg, where Fitchburg goes east-west, and then there are 4 individual businesses. I believe it's 2 fast food restaurants, a car wash, and a bank, if I'm remembering that right. Okay. Those are right on McKee Road, and their entrance will be coming off of Fitchburg Road. That's, as Bill mentioned before the meeting, that's been tabled at the last few Common Council meetings. Part of that is because of traffic impact analysis that the city has been requiring of the developer, and also the city has been working with both the county and the state on the traffic impact analysis for that development, because while right now it's only those businesses and apartments that I named, in the future we do expect that whole area to be developed. So we're trying to basically plan out our future traffic impact analyses, so we're looking at the right things at the right times. So basically that's why it's been tabled at the last few meetings, because they haven't had their subdivision improvement agreement ready, because that has language that calls back to the TIA, the traffic impact analysis.
Okay.
So I believe that will be on the Board of Public Works agenda for next week, and is set to be to go through Board of Public Works and then to the last council meeting of the year on the 12th.
We moved our Public Works meeting up a week, so it's actually happening next Monday instead.
Yes.
So that it's before the December 10th
Yeah,
meeting.
December 10th,
December
sorry.
10th being the only council meeting in December.
Well, it's contagious, moving meetings.
You didn't want to have one on the 24th?
Well, I mean, I was all for it.
All right, anything else for staff? All right, thank you very much, Ross. On to council items. Ordinance 2024-0-33 is the reason we're meeting tonight. So let's start with a motion to recommend approval and then a staff report.
I'll move that we approve ordinance 2024-033.
Second.
Thank you, Bill and Logan, in the other order. Ross, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this ordinance will reduce the speed limit on West Clayton Road from what it is now, which is 35 miles per hour, down to 25 miles per hour. This will apply to both sections of West Clayton Road, both on the east and west of the railroad tracks. So there's a portion that comes off of South Saline that dead ends at the railroad tracks. And then there's also a portion that comes off of Herman Road that is a dead end on the east end and then also dead ends at the railroad tracks. So this would pertain to both of those sections. When that road went through, it was 35 miles per hour when it crossed the railroad tracks. But now it's a dead-end neighborhood road, so 25 miles per hour is more appropriate.
It used to connect Saline all the way over to Larson Road, and then the U.S. Highway cut it first, and then later McCoy Road was built. I'm understanding that in the time that McCoy Road was first built, it was envisioned to connect to McKee Road over the E-Way. And of course, we don't do that anymore. And so that whole idea went away. But McCoy Road is the new West Clayton Road, or through traffic. And it's just a residential street. Ross, is Herman Road also 25 already?
Herman Road is per ordinance 25 miles per hour.
Yeah, per the default.
It is not signed. So
short.
When city streets staff goes out to replace these signs, if this is approved, they'll also sign Herman as 25. Since you're coming off of McCoy, there should be a sign. Yeah.
Very good.
Is this an opportunity for questions?
Yeah.
Was there any?
Well, we're to discussion now. If there are any questions for staff.
Yes.
Yes, give that.
What was the impetus for this?
It's a report by a citizen.
Is the citizen in the room with us?
There were also, we've gotten a couple of complaints from residents on that road.
On the other
about
side.
Speeding, yeah.
The Kelly Moss people. Are they capable of going less than 30
Well,
miles an hour?
their speeding, I don't think, is on the residential part of the road, to be fair.
Well, they put the ramp out there,
Okay.
So it just, I wondered if anyone expected any effect as a result of changing the speed limit. Like, once it's changed, then what different things happen on West Clayton Road as a result of this ordinance, other than the signs get changed?
In theory, people drive slower.
Yes. Yes.
We get Vision Zero brownie points from people like the League for American Bicyclists for doing speed limit reductions.
Okay.
So reducing speed limits where warranted, and
Yes.
I've got a couple of other ideas too, is a good thing to reduce the chance that anybody that gets hit by a car will be hurt. And so it's going to be my impetus to try to find places to reduce speed limits, and that was an obvious one. When I went by there on my bike and looked down there and said, oh, 35 miles an hour to nowhere, 1 block long. So.
Right. And what was the original decision to separate West Clayton Road and make it impassable to
At the railroad.
That
was because that was a bargaining chip to get a new road crossing at Central Park Place. We had to give one up.
Oh, okay.
And they won't be a T-shaped cul-de-sac forever if the north side of Uptown ever builds out.
Yes.
Then it will be connected, the west end that now dead ends at the tracks will be connected south into that newest roundabout that's in Uptown.
Okay. I see.
And serve that. And there will be a couple of ways to get out to Herman Road and then on to McCoy from the north part of Uptown.
Thank you.
Couple questions as well, Ross. First thing is, I assume that there will be, with the new speed limit signs, some flags. Is there any other plans for enforcement or for kind of letting folks know that this is changing, or is it kind of just they'll drive, folks will drive home one day and see it's lowered and that's it?
Right, yes. When we do change speed limit signs, we put up the orange flags. Usually we leave them up for 6-ish weeks, or when someone has time to go, take them back down. We don't have any major plans for enforcement here. This is a relatively low priority road for enforcement, since it's a dead end on both ends.
Are we adding the sign on the Kelly Moss side?
No, there's a sign there already.
I think not.
That's the one I reported, is if you turn from South Sayin onto it, going eastbound, there's a sign right there that says 35.
Next to the fire station.
Yep.
Good.
Now, I don't think that there's one at the other end, of course, because you're in a 35 zone, or 25 zone because you had to pass it on the way in. So you don't normally mark both ends of a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Other questions or any other kind of discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Yeah, that's to recommend adoption, and any to recommend against it. All right, it is unanimous. On to discussion items. The first one is a Vision Zero draft. In your packet is something that Ross crafted, and behind it some markup that I submitted to him that he worked from along with his own ideas, and I think we're going to discuss that now. What would you like to tell us about this, Ross?
I would like to put this up on the
Oh, that's a great idea.
screen, which is what I was working on there, so sorry about that. But since we don't have anyone on Zoom, I was told I could do this instead. So, basically the two supporting documents for this, and just kind of a reminder, this is just for discussion. It's not, we're not voting on this resolution or anything. The two supporting documents, the first one is my draft of Fitchburg's Vision Zero resolution, and the second document is the Vision Zero model resolution from Change Lab with Steve's notes in a couple of key areas. So, basically, as far as the statistics in this go, the 11 deaths from 2013 to 2024 come from community maps. That's just based off of crash reports. And all of the other statistics you see in there come from the Wisconsin DOT. They have this crash statistics page. So let me get back to my PowerPoint. And the main difference from the model resolution is that in the Fitchburg version, there's language stating that the Vision Zero date where we would endeavor to have 0 traffic deaths or serious injuries would be determined by our forthcoming safety action plan. So.
I am thinking that, I know that going that route would make staff and possibly council members more comfortable. But we are working right now, unlike some jurisdictions, with less than 1 fatality per year. Can you say anything about whether that was kind of front-loaded or back-loaded in terms of the 12-year period, 11 years of?
It was about equally distributed.
Yeah. So we're dealing with kind of a random Poisson process that we need to push the probability of it happening down. And ideally, you would like cars in hermetically sealed corridors that could never get close to vulnerable users, and then you could say we're at division 0 because we're never going to have any crashes or something like that. But instead, what we're going to do is make incremental improvements over time to push down this probability. So I consider the setting of a date to be aspirational and window dressing, that even Hoboken, or was it Jersey City, I always get the two mixed up, who has had, as a result of their Vision Zero program, no fatal or serious injury crashes for now 5 years, I think, could have one at any time. I'm for putting a date in there. But I did think of a halfway measure because I know the mayor is interested in, from the Whalen Road paved shoulders discussion, that she is interested in concentrating our efforts where the most people will benefit. And I was going to throw out the idea of saying, be it further resolved, it adopts the goal of eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries, and this is the insert, by 2030 in the urban service area and by a future year to be determined for the rest of the city. That is the rural area. So that would be a compromise. A couple of others, two other suggestions I had on this Ross's draft was that we have the footnote letters that are still in there, and since we are not providing the notes that substantiate these things, we should eliminate those.
So I think we can turn them into hyperlinks. They'll appear as active hyperlinks in all of our agenda packets and whatnot.
I'm good with that, but it won't in the published version of this.
Not on the printed page, right? But I think it's valuable to have.
We could put
backing
QR
documentation
codes
built right in there. Yeah.
All right. So, but anyway, they're not there now. Therefore, we should do something about those footnotes. Yes. They should be renumbered from 1 because we only used about 4 of them. And it looked like the last two, be it further resolved clauses, is a duplicate that needs to be eliminated. So, other discussion on this draft? Bill?
Yeah, the 4th whereas talks about all the vulnerable road users, but I feel like we ought to have something in there about mobility devices. Wheelchairs, skateboard users, rollerbladers, et cetera, are not represented in that specific list. And I think if we use kind of a micro mobility device sort of language, that will capture everything we know about today and some stuff that we don't yet know will exist in the future.
You like that rather than something like mobility aids because you're talking about one wheels and things like that, right?
Right.
Sounds good to me. Other thoughts by Bill or any reaction to that?
Just quick reaction to that. I don't know if this is getting too granular here. I don't know if we'd want to do something that would be including but not limited to your point about, 10 years ago e-bikes were not nearly as prevalent, and that this is kind of future-proofing so that if there's some new, floating hoverboard, zero gravity, whatever device of the future, that we're kind of setting ourselves up to mention it without knowing it exists at the juncture of December 5th, 2024?
Just before we get too far on this, I do want to point out that all of those things would still count as traffic fatalities or severe injuries, so they are still rolled into this. It's not like we're limiting ourselves, it's just naming them in that 4th whereas clause.
Sure.
That last clause, for the resolved Fitchburg Common Council, that resolved the Fitchburg Common Council that it will adopt a Vision Zero policy upon completion of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Is that typical language where there's an intention at the end of a
If you go to
resolution
the,
specifically do it the next thing? I'm not like opposed to it, I just wondered, is that something that is
well, there's the
appropriate?
old thing about you can't bind future councils.
Exactly, like
Right.
if the current council intends to, I don't know, encourages the adoption, it just seems like it's, yeah, again, it's kind of impossible to,
The council supports.
yeah.
I can run that by Valerie and use whatever language she
Yeah, it's
suggests.
something that actually feels realistic.
Yeah, fair enough.
And Steve, I appreciate your comment about the date, but it does concern me to put a date on it, because
Can you tell me more why?
I think it goes back to that discussion last time about a date implies
Oh,
investment by a certain time. And
yep.
yeah, and I appreciate like the desire to.
Yep.
I think the fact that it says a future year to be determined by the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, I think that's pretty specific in terms of setting a future goal. I'm not necessarily
The problem is
opposed
that
to it, just-
the safety action plan is not gonna guarantee that we'll have zero incidents. It only is gonna set a path toward addressing the most problematic areas in an effort to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
But we can never guarantee that. For example, so the very famous crash in New York where some woman drove onto the High Line bike and ped path with their car and killed a bicyclist happened 2 weeks or 2 months or something, I forget the exact story, after a similar incident where there was a similar fatality and people demanded bollards there and they didn't put them to prevent motor vehicles from entering there. So you're going out and finding things like that and saying, this is an accident waiting to happen or a crash waiting to happen, we're gonna fix this. But you're still not in a position to guarantee that it's gonna be 2028 or 2035. So that's why I'm saying that the year is kind of aspirational and you put down a year because you want to, I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm not opposed to it, I just thought I'd bring it up since
Yep.
we had that conversation about the implication of a date
Yep.
obligating bonds.
Thank you for reminding me about that.
I don't know if it does or not. I mean, I also think there's value in saying a year, but just want to be cognizant of why we're adapting this resolution.
Well, and I think there's, we've got an entire city to think about, and to go back and retroactively, address, remediate all of the potential problems that we've got out there is a monumental task, and we don't have the funding to do that. I would love to see something in here that says, from now on, all the infrastructure we build will be done with Vision Zero in mind. And potentially, commit to some level of annual funding to go back for remediation of existing conditions.
That's a good idea.
How is that not already true today regardless of this?
Well,
How is, what specifically? How
All the
already true?
infrastructure we build henceforth not being designed with the intention of having no fatalities or injuries.
It's a good question for Russ. Let Russ.
I want to point out that none of our existing infrastructure was built with the intention of fatalities either.
True. Yes. This is what I've only been here a little while on this commission, but where my head's at on this is that this seems more like window dressing for the brownie points that you mentioned before, rather than something that really changes our behavior. Now, you said one thing that was important in what we talked about before, which was that you can't unilaterally resolve something that you see as an issue without a petition from a certain number of residents who live on a certain street to be able to take action on that. And to my mind, that was an important distinction that, that you couldn't on your own, out of the city's staff, and assuming the budget was there, take an action on something, that you needed a petition first. That was what I heard you tell us a couple meetings ago. And so.
Hold on, is that really true? I thought a staff member could initiate a TMP.
So to clarify, staff cannot use the funding that is designated for the traffic management process, or could not use that money without a petition. And right now, the way that process was rewritten, staff can initiate that petition, but we still need that petition to use that particular fund of money.
You could be the initiator of a petition.
Correct.
And there are other sources of money.
There are other sources of money, like just putting a project in our capital improvement plan. Like the project could be called Safety Improvements on McCoy Road, or whatever it was. And then that would get, voted on or against by council and be funded that way. But we have that one particular fund of money that can be designated by petition and the rest of the process.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Getting back to your idea about the stuff that we build.
Yes.
So when they were designing the roundabout at Lacey and Seminole, originally the design had a slip lane from the westbound leg to the northbound lane because that was a heavy traffic movement. And by putting in the slip lane, you could reduce delays for that traffic. What that did was create a conflict point for pedestrians crossing two of the legs, an additional conflict point where those two lanes would merge back in to the northbound on Seminole. And so what it does, what the design feature did was move traffic faster by being less safe. And that got removed. But we still have that feature at McCoy and MM. And last time I looked, we had it in the design for McCoy at Syene and South Syene. And slip lanes is like a known thing that we should be getting rid of. Another thing is curb radii. We get all the time we get folks who are designing very broad curb radii for corners to allow motorists to go around them without slowing down so much. And by making those curb radii sharper, you can slow traffic through the intersection. But the downside is that now design vehicles that are big like garbage trucks that have to go through there might have a trouble. And so you could put mountable red curbs that they can go over, just like the islands on a roundabout. So there are all these kinds of things that we could be doing, but we're not. And that's the difference between putting everything in kind of in a vision. Another example would be the protected intersection that was proposed for South Syene and East Sherrill and didn't get built. And I can't remember why, but I think it was cost.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we are still compromising and we're putting safety. So in strong towns, they say, you ask a bunch of citizens what they want and they'll say safety and first and then volume and speed and things like that. And if you ask a traffic engineer, they put all those four things in the opposite order. Present company may be accepted. I don't want to be personal about this, but that's the way the profession generally designs. And so what this tries to do is say, we're going to do things differently from now on. And one of the ways to do that is to set a date certain. Another way to do it is to say we're going to commit a certain amount of money. There's different ways to incent yourself to follow through.
Here's one other example that I'll throw in my least favorite, I don't know which kind of example this is, but the intersection of McKee Road and Fish Hatchery Road. If you pull up Google Maps and look at the satellite imagery, You can right click and you can measure the width of the street, okay? So away from that intersection, it's 2 lanes in each direction. It's about 54 feet curb face to curb face, 54 feet. You wanna cross McKee Road, it's 200 feet. And it's not 4 lanes, it's 7 lanes you have to cross. 3 of them are slip lanes. And I mean, that's, to me, is just openly hostile to pedestrians. It's also, maybe Ross knows this off the top of his head as well, but the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, says that your light timing should be such that when the pedestrian signal is on, you should assume people are going to walk at 3.5 feet per second. So if you take the 200 feet, divide by 3.5 feet per second, that's 57 seconds. You think anybody's going to stand for a light signal that long? So it's shorter, which means that if you're not able-bodied, you're gonna take several light cycles. You're gonna probably go to the middle island and wait and take 2 or possibly even 3 light cycles to cross the street, which, 54 feet divided by 3.5 is like 15.5 seconds. But instead, we're almost quadrupling it, and that's just walking time, So, again, to me, it's a recipe for something to go wrong when you're putting a pedestrian out there for that length of time and exposing them to 7 lanes of traffic.
So let me ask the opposite question then. Are we saying that the adoption of this would put safety first with cost as being no consideration?
I don't think so.
Vision Zero does say that there should be no loss of life. And I think that we can all agree to that losing people because our transportation system and our drivers and our vehicles kill them is unacceptable. Now, there's always the argument of the value of a human life, but I think that what we're doing now is we're prioritizing things differently. We're not prioritizing safety first. So I think it's going to be clear that more would be spent on some of these things than we spend now.
However, if part of Vision Zero says we're not going to put in slip lanes, that could reduce the cost of an intersection significantly.
And roundabouts are cheaper than signalized intersections, and there's other things. If you put in roads that are narrower, I mean, it's pretty costly to do what they did to Hammersley, which is to take a wide road, make it skinny, and put a multi-use path next to it.
Right.
But it's very cheap to build a narrow road and a multi-use path, cheaper than building the wide road.
Sure.
So there is places that we can save to help fund this.
What I like about the Vision Zero personally, and I appreciate that we've changed it so that because the policy has those implications of cost, so we've adjusted it there in this way. But what I like about Vision Zero, and I had not heard the concept until we started talking about it here, is just like, I think it's pretty powerful to just be like, people don't have to die on our roads. And that sounds like simple, but like honestly, like I think most people just assume that people are gonna die on the streets. Like I think most people have accepted that as reality. Like, oh, people are just gonna die in traffic accidents.
Right.
That was in my head, truly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, every one of us in here, statistically speaking, has a 1% chance that we will die in traffic violence.
So just like, something that I just assumed was true. And so I think it's pretty powerful to be like, no, that doesn't have to be true. Like, obviously it still could happen at any time, but like, it doesn't have to be true. I think that's pretty powerful to just say that out loud and just be like, nope, it might still happen, but it doesn't have to, and they can work towards it not being happening at all. And I put this akin to the 2019 resolution about climate, where there was a resolution passed by the council. This is before
either of us.
Actually, I think the only person on the council that's still in elected office is Julia. They passed a resolution about a climate change goal of, reducing, or I can't remember, I think it's like net zero.
100% of the municipal electricity would be
renewable by 2035 or something.
Like that, yeah.
So, and that one actually probably has a lot more cost implications to it, but it's something that is referenced continually, because the staff member that was around when that was put together is still here working on sustainability issues. So we reference that, we'll be like, the council made a statement that this is what we wanna do. Now, it might not happen, but we're already doing better than we thought we would at this point, and it certainly has shifted how we think about it, and now we're at the point where solar panels are like a default conversation as part of new buildings. Electric vehicles are now, now the question is, why is this not an electric vehicle? Instead of, should this be an electric vehicle? You know, like the question is shifted, and that statement, and then keeping that statement alive through the conversation and continuing to bring it up is what keeps that top of mind. So I feel like this is similar in nature to that climate resolution in 2019, and I think assuming that staff and the elected officials and the people with committees like this continue to keep it alive through a commitment, through that discussion, I think it will have an impact long term, and it might not be at the scale that or the timeline we want it to be, but I think it's important to say it out loud.
I'll add one more thing to what Gabriella said, which is a example. In the airline industry and in the rail industry, they have what they call a culture of safety, and that is that we need 0 accidents. We don't want any airplanes falling out of the sky, but we don't want a technician to fall off a wing and break a leg. So they work on that all the time. If you ever go to an airline safety conference, the rail conference that I've been to for several years, the statewide freight rail conference, they always start out with safety talk. They talk about where all the exits are, what to do in case of all kinds of emergencies, and they do that to reinforce the culture of safety that they want to pervade everything. Well, we don't do that. We just treat vulnerable users and to some extent motor vehicle occupants as collateral damage for the convenience of getting places fast and conveniently. And that's what we're trying to change.
I have one comment and then a question that I may spur some discussion as well. First thing is a difference in language that I noted that I appreciated, Ross, in your draft versus the one from Change Lab. There was a quote from the Change Lab suggested draft that said, I don't remember which page, I apologize. Human life shall be prioritized over ease of movement for motor vehicles. And again, that's something that I think should, on its face is pretty self-explanatory and something I certainly support. I also have looking to Madison and seeing how Vision Zero has been received there, and even about an hour before the meeting tonight, I saw a post on Facebook about them reducing speed limits in residential areas to 20 for the 20 is Plenty campaign, and further some consternation and complaints about the overall efforts of Vision Zero. So our resolution does not, it's less antagonistic to drivers while still communicating the same goals and visions. And I think if we want to have more community support for these initiatives, I think it's hard to start from a place that says people who drive just want to get places faster and you're selfish and you're what have you. It brings a little bit of that defensiveness. And again, while it's a minor difference, but it's something I noticed in ours that was missing that I very much appreciated, that it starts from a place of human life shall be the top priority, not human life shall be the top priority at the expense of this, and kind of that leaving that out, I think hopefully makes it more amenable to the community writ large. My question then kind of gets back to our chair's point and discussion about the mayor, and I don't know how we can approach it with getting into hearsay and whatnot. I was wondering about the disparities between the urban service area and the non-urban service area. If we were to go a route of 2030 in the urban service area versus point TBD outside the urban service area, are the crashes that we've seen, these 11 fatalities in the last, since 2013, generally in the urban service area or outside of it? And my kind of soapbox would be, there are still a significant number of residents outside the urban service area who are in neighborhoods like Greenfield, for example. So I don't know how I'd feel about crossing them off the list entirely and saying, we're gonna prioritize in the urban service area first. So I'll jump off my soapbox and hopefully go
I
from there.
think probably the intention was the rural area has rural roads, which are narrower, often don't have shoulders and have higher speed limits, and there's not a whole lot you can do with that without spending an awful lot of money.
Completely redesign.
But I get your point, if we talk about rather than within the urban service area, language about within residential neighborhoods, wherever they may be, and however you want to define that, is a farmhouse here, an eighth of a mile down the road from another farmhouse, a neighborhood, or is that more of a rural highway?
So, just to answer your question about deaths in the urban service area versus outside, these red dots are traffic deaths from 2013 December to 2024 December. Only got 10 on here. I don't remember if
Maybe one of them's doubled up.
Fatality accident, but as you can, I don't know exactly where the urban service area boundary is on the east side of the city.
I think you're looking at it, that square there. So maybe the 11th one is the one down by Kopke's on the southeast.
Oh, no, yes, I'm saying everything, this is the Fitchburg border, is a square.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
okay,
not quite
the
sure
urban
where the
service,
urban
yeah.
service area line is, but I am 80% sure that
Those two are out of it.
Okay, so these two are out of it, all right.
But no. Let's see, that's on MM.
Zoom in, where is that relative to Terra Vesa itself?
Yeah, so that's not in the urban service area.
I think it still makes a similar point that most of them are in the urban service area. That's just where most of the people in Fitchburg live and drive.
But I was thinking that I went to bed way too early last night, so I woke up in the middle of the night and I was thinking about this. And I was thinking about mitigating rural intersections, and the one that comes to mind is Fitch-Arona and Wayland as a four-way. And what other intersections, as I was lying in bed, are that type of intersection? Well, it used to be Oak Hall there at M and Fish Hatchery, South Fish Hatchery, but now we've got a signal there. But, that is, in the rural areas, you've got your running four-way stop signs or two-way stop signs, and you've got your running off the road kind of incidents. Those are some of the main modes of out there, whereas in the urban service area, different things come into play that are more, you've got more pedestrians and other vulnerable users. So, but I was hoping to maybe get a date on half the city. So I don't really want to exclude the rural area, but.
I think I was gonna make that point, Logan, as well, so I
Yep.
appreciate you bringing that up, because I understand where you're coming from, Steve, especially from a cost perspective, but it could be perceived as lessening the impact. And we might wanna spend a big chunk of money to make some rural roads safer. You know what I mean? Like, that just is something that we might choose to do as a policy matter. But if you're specific about dates, that could imply a difference between how you spend that funding.
There's also different pots of money available for grants for rural roads versus urban roads. So.
And Republican administrations at the state and federal level are both interested in driving a wedge maybe, but they're emphasizing, that there were earmarks for rural areas for transportation alternatives, for surface transportation funds and things like that. Well, you have some comments. Anybody else want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, I have two questions. One, the easy one is I'm not great at these resolutions, but the last one on the first page, is that more of a resolved than a whereas? Like, cause it says we will work towards reducing vehicle speeds, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, you mean, should it
That's an
be
action.
therefore resolved?
Yeah.
Right, like, whereas it's just supposed to be like information,
Yeah,
background information, right?
This is a question. I'm wondering if the committee thinks that the main part of that line is the likelihood of a pedestrian surviving a crash is 10% if hit by a vehicle moving 40 miles per hour.
Right.
That should be the way.
Yeah,
it is.
Then just
chop
deleting the
out
work
the-
towards
Yeah,
part.
okay.
yeah, whereas, then you skip all the way to the likelihood.
If it's accurate to say that the city of Fitchburg is currently working towards, then it's not, now resolved. But if
Right.
like you say, if the main thrust is to inform people that speed kills, then yeah, maybe we don't need to worry about that verbiage at all.
And then my other question is about both the statement and the resolution about enforcement of traffic violations. And just how that fits into the overall plan. Like, I think that's a great goal for any city or group of people to have.
Feels different.
But it feels completely different from crashes, and it also feels like something that's completely untrackable. Like 0 deaths is a goal. Eliminating racial profiling is not a thing that we can say we have ever done. Or like, that's just not a
Yes.
trackable goal.
So some of my experience with the police department leads me to believe that racial profiling is maybe less of a problem here than in some jurisdictions. But on a national basis, one of the common results of safety drives is to ramp up enforcement. And what happens is that in many cases, enforcement is on the people who have the least voice in City Hall, which are downtrodden neighborhoods and minorities and things like that.
Yeah. All of us, I
And
agree
so,
with.
so I think that this is a reaction to that. It says, what we do here, we're not going to do that.
And how does that reduce pedestrian deaths?
Or any deaths, yes. I think that it's saying that we want to take actions that do not put an undue burden on minorities that are already overburdened. It's part of a how, not a what. I'm giving my views on it, and I would have to do research to substantiate them, but I think that's what they're getting at here.
I had a thought that was a little along the lines of what you were saying, and I appreciated the whereases that were specific to the city of Fitchburg. And I had, especially because you talked about, the superscripted numbers referencing, stuff in a later document, that the more that this was specifically about Fitchburg, and the less it was about this broad brush of the nation and cities all over the map, the more that it feels relevant to us.
And therefore, it might be better accepted by the public.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the whereases are throwaways that don't need to be in this document unless they're specific to Fitchburg.
Following up on Micah's comment, it also feels like enforcing traffic violations feels like a very different policy than this is focused on public works and design, and that's a policing choice. So I wonder if it could be something closer to, like, we don't want to make the streets safer and reduce pedestrian deaths by moving towards more enforcement, because that's not, like, this is
Or by
focused on
inevitable
design.
enforcement.
Yeah. But I don't know, I think it's a good comment, because it's a very different, it's a whole different realm of policy, right? It's not.
Well, and again, on a national level, you turn on the news almost any day and you can find somebody pulled over for a routine traffic stop who winds up dead.
Yeah, so reducing traffic stops is a goal. However, enforcement has a role, and even though it's currently illegal in Wisconsin, speed cameras have been proven to be equitable because they're not looking at the people. They just look at speed and tags, and they're, you know, a proven countermeasure against speeding, and that is a form of enforcement. And it's something that Milwaukee had a bill in the hopper in the legislature a couple years back that I testified on, was to make an exception because they have such a severe reckless driving problem in Milwaukee proper, that they wanted an exception to the statute, written into the statute for Milwaukee, so they could use speed cameras and red light cameras. And the other thing that goes along with that is that if you can't find the driver, then you can cite the owner of the vehicle. So I do think that enforcement is important, but it has to be equitable and with all the usual connotations of that word, like more help where more help is needed.
I do wonder if there's a way to word it, like you said, the word, like we state that like the focus of the changes are around design and not enforcement or something.
Well, Vision Zero has 5 parts, and one of them is, well, safer speeds, safer roads, safer vehicles, safer drivers, and post-crash care. So that's not all design.
Does it say that in the resolution anywhere?
No, it doesn't, but that's the National Vision Zero. I think they call them pillars, the 5 parts. Well, Ross, I don't mean to cut off discussion, but because we can have more, but you feel like you have good fodder? And what would be the next steps? Could we look at another draft and then ask the mayor to bring it to the council?
Yeah, so next steps, you all are the first people giving comments on this. There will also be rounds of comments going through Public Works,
Staff,
Police Department, and any other departments we think are relevant.
Mm-hmm. Legal.
Yes, yeah, obviously. And then, I can bring that draft plus these comments back again in a discussion format, and then I would assume after a second discussion on it, it would be ready to move on to an actual resolution.
What would be a good timeline, like February? Would that give you enough time to circulate it around and get comments?
Yeah, maybe at our February meeting, I could have it back for that second discussion.
Does that sound good as a path forward to people?
I think that's fine as long as Ross knows that if it takes longer than that, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I think it's just to do it with, you know.
It's not like winter is a slow season for the engineering department.
Yeah.
We recognize that.
I would loop in the mayor too, if we want her to sponsor it, I'd
Yes.
make sure that she gets looped in on the earlier
She
end.
would, maybe the next one.
Yeah, administration will definitely be involved, and I think probably Chad will talk with the mayor about it.
Great.
Okay. All right, thank you for all those good comments. You said that you wanted to table the discussion of extensions of B and 65 to wait for more information, Ross?
Yeah, I just don't have any cost information on it, and that's what I was kind of waiting for to discuss, so.
Okay.
I'll move to table item
This is a
7B.
discussion.
Yep, so discussion is over.
Oh, okay.
Good. But we will put it up for future discussion. And maybe let's try January for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last thing we have here of substance is these north-south BRT plans. And they were lovely. It was very interesting and exciting to drive up and down Fish Hatchery Road and imagine where the stations would be and things like that. But I did have a few comments, and I'm sure the rest of you did too. How do you want to handle this, Ross?
I think the best way to handle this is to go through any general comments that are not station or location specific, like if they apply to all of the stations or all of the pavement marking or something like that. And then I think we can, the way I've got this plan set up on the screen is it's just the Fitchburg stations and streets, and it goes south to north. So it starts at Triverton, Pike, and McKee, and goes to the north. So I think going through it in that order will be best, just kind of as I go through the plan set. And I can make notes on here as we go. So I guess starting off with the typical section, the typical section is going to stay the same on Fish Hatchery Road. We're just shifting the bus lane from the outside to the inside. So any comments on that?
Yeah, let me make a quick question to get it out of the way. Did I understand that they're going to signalize Fish Hatchery and High Ridge Trail?
Yes.
Good.
So the new, if you are interested, the spot that's depicted is on this summary page.
I kind of glossed over those summary
Yeah,
pages, but thank you for pointing that out.
That's our only new signal, so.
I had a question about, so they show in a page or more forward the paint schemes, and so you've got a bus only or you've got a bus only with a Sharrow. And as you're well aware, I'm very concerned about the loss of on-street bicycle facility because of all the driveways and intersections on Fish Hatchery. And so my original question was, when will Sharrows be used? In other words, the right-hand diagram in the bus-only box. And then I later discovered that it appeared that they were being shown only on the side running portions where they're crossing the Fish Hatchery Bridge. My question to the designers and to the designers of the east-west segment is that there seems to be a permissive feeling about bikes in the center running bus lanes. That they're not marking them that way, but they expect the bicyclists to use them if they're really eager to be on an on-road facility. And someone asked the question, well, how would they get across all the traffic out to there? And it's the same way that they would take a left turn. You have to cross the traffic. So you could do it in an intersection or you could merge lane by lane. Why can't we use bus bike only instead of bus only? I don't like the Sharrows as much, but that would be an alternative if it makes somebody feel better. If you consider that the D line and the 75 would be putting like 2 buses in each direction every 15 minutes, it's not a lot of congestion for bicyclists and buses to deal with. So that's my comment. Do you have any feedback on that?
So the reason that we didn't put in Sharrows or call the bus only lane a shared bus bike lane is because then there would be an expectation of designating a way for bicyclists to get from bike lanes or bike paths into that center lane. And there's really not a good way to do that officially.
But the bicyclists are allowed, so I'm a bicyclist, I would do it at an intersection, or I would do it lane by lane, scanning and moving left, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way you have to do it all the time. So that excuse does not resonate with me. I don't know. Instead, you're saying I have to walk my bike a half a block on the side that doesn't have the path, or I have to go into the lane and have people raise their fists at me. What are you doing in the bus-only lane? Those are bad things too.
Yeah, you're right. Right now, what the marked expectation would be is that bicyclists would use the path on the west side of Fish Hatchery, or obviously bicyclists can use the travel lanes. I wouldn't really advise that on Fish Hatchery.
No.
Doesn't seem
Right.
great for
Is
anyone.
there, would you say that it's a citable offense for a bike to be in the bus-only lane?
It is. I don't think Fitchburg PD will be seeking to write tickets for that.
Okay, so if that's a citable offense, then I really want it to be designated. And so I hope you will take that feedback from me and the rest of Bike Fitchburg.
And if it's intended that bikers should use that lane, then I think we have to put some indication within that lane, or, you know, that driver you said was shaking his fist might say, well, hey, if he can use the lane, so can I, and, you know.
It's not intended for bicyclists to use that lane because it is not marked.
Okay.
Yep,
Just stating that.
so let's go back to,
Yeah. No, I
the
take
comment
take
is
your comment.
requested,
Yep.
we want it marked for bikes because we don't want it to be a citable offense. We don't want people yelling at us for being in the wrong lane, and we want to be safe, and that's much safer than travel lane. And if I'm going northbound and I want to access something on the east side of the road, I want a way to get there. And I strongly believe that the excuse of how will you get there is not a factor, because you can see on your map you've got those zebras there, and that's one way. Okay, so that's my big substantive, not specific to any station comment.
Is the design that you're talking about different than the design that exists already now in the city of Madison? In other words,
So what they did on the east-west line
Yep.
is that bicyclists are riding in the red lanes if they prefer the streets,
Yes.
and Madison police are not citing them,
Yes.
and that Metro management is saying, we don't see a big conflict if there are bikes there. But it's still a citable offense.
It's decriminalized.
Yes. Yeah, so they're not enforcing it, but you know, you still have the problem of the general public thinks that you're being a scofflaw.
Okay.
Are all of the bike and new Fish Hatchery Road design issues solved if Fitchburg just allowed people to bike on sidewalks?
No, because that's not safe. It's
It's safer than biking in a bus lane.
No, I disagree with that. You have as big a difference between 30 miles an hour traffic and 15-mile-an-hour bike as you do a 15-mile-an-hour bike and a stopped pedestrian. And pedestrians can be a lot more unpredictable in their movements than cars, which can.
And
I think the outcome of a 30-mile-an-hour car and a 15-mile-an-hour bike is going to be a much higher likelihood of injury than a 15-mile-an-hour bike and a 3-mile-an-hour.
Which is why the
pedestrian.
bikers are in the bus lane instead. But the other big issue with sidewalk or even a multi-use path is that we have a limited amount of right-of-way to put our transportation corridor through, which means there's almost never enough space between a sidewalk or a multi-use path and the road for a car to be between them, so they have a good view of the road without stopping on the sidewalk or on the multi-use path. So if you're on that multi-use path or the sidewalk, you have to watch out at each and every driveway for cars who are not paying attention whatsoever to you, but are instead concerned with what's on the road beyond that. Whereas if we had more leeway, they would say, okay, I'm safe to cross the sidewalk, let me get to my next stopping point and see if it's safe to get on the road. And I think that's from the perspective of someone who does this, it's very nerve-wracking to ride up and down that the multi-use path on Fish Hatchery Road because of all the driveways.
You see a good example of what Bill is talking, a good counterexample, where you've got heavy traffic at the Hairball interchange. And so the driveway into Machinery Row and Sardine Restaurant, the path deviates away from the street so that there is an 18-foot gap. So you've got a stop sign at the path, and you look for path users because there's going to be some, and then you look at any time of the day or time of year, and then you can move forward and look at John Millen Drive. But that's the thing that you don't have room for most places that Bill's saying. Okay, so any other comments that are generally up and down the whole corridor? Then I guess we will start with Trevorton Pike.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different sheets here, so if your comment would be better explained on a different sheet, let me know. But this is Trevorton Pike. This is, the blue is new concrete. This outline here with all the different hatching is the station. And basically the takeaway here is this island will be eliminated. Traffic, basically this will be a bus pullout, and the road will be slightly redesigned to make that happen. So traffic will go past where this island currently is.
There's 2 lanes eastbound, and one of them is a bus-only lane. The bus will stop in.
Yes.
Is there any physical separation there to prevent somebody from not paying attention and rear-ending that bus?
The bus, no, there's not physical separation, but the bus will be out of the bus will not be in the normal traffic lane.
Okay.
There's a complete normal traffic lane that completely
Yes.
bypasses the bus.
It will be the same effect as like a parked car.
Okay.
Question of the maps is is that heavy center line, is that the center line of the right-of-way? Is that what that line is depicting?
That is the stationing line.
It's just for reference in the diagrams.
Usually that's on the center of the right-of-way, but I wouldn't bet on it necessarily, depending on how big of a bet you wanted to make.
So my only comment was that I like the Trevorton Pike design. For those who are not aware or who didn't see the later sheet, there's a path that comes out of McKee Farms Park and ends up right where Rossville Point, right there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it hits that landing, and so there'll be a new multi-use path that runs along the shoulder, and then a 10-foot wide bicycle pedestrian crossing, and then the path will be extended all the way up there, and you can get to the McKee Road bike lanes, and I have in my imagination it extending then along McKee Road to Yarmouth Greenway and a crossing, but it could be on the other side, and then Yarmouth Greenway, which unlike Trevorton Pike is flat. Trevorton Pike is a steep hill up into that neighborhood. The Yarmouth Greenway would be a bike route.
And that's potentially those path projects will be part of a different project.
Yep, understood. That water line thing.
Anticipating them.
Yep.
And that was a question I had too then, is if this is kind of the end line station, and especially if we end up in a state where there's multiple buses kind of interfacing all here, and that increases the number of folks who will want to get to this, and I can imagine folks wanting to cross from, what is that, Hatchery Hill across Trevorton Pike, Yarmouth Greenway on that north side of McKee there. And I don't know if there's any planned infrastructure improvements for pedestrians or bikes trying to cross McKee. And I don't know if that would be part of this project or part of the other McKee project. Otherwise, it looks like you'd have to go west a block to Chapel Valley, or if you're on Yarmouth Greenway, you're going 2 blocks west or up the path and around, and that our local hairball intersection of McKee and Fish Hatch as well.
So there is a stop in Hatchery Hill. So that will be much easier for residents or commercial people going to the businesses there to get to that station.
I must be thinking of a different, or is it? It's not Highlands of Seminole. Whatever it is, north on Treverton Pike, because there's not a good way to cut through the, across the Capital City Trail, and so then the folks who are north, along Yarmouth Greenway, Treverton Pike, Chapel Valley, if they're either gonna have to cut through the woods, get on the Capital City Trail at Longford Terrace, go all the way around, or
We're talking about bikes or peds right now.
either one.
Yeah, so there is a sidewalk along McKee Road on the south side, and they could cross at Chapel Valley at a signalized intersection.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was plans to do any more at Treverton Pike.
So not as part of the BRT project, but increased pedestrian or bike usage would be monitored and improvements would be made.
With our new
If
Vision
that
Zero
crossing
funds.
actually gets used. It's not marked, it's very, very seldom used right now.
So I can easily imagine if somebody winds up at the bus station there during the dwell time, that they might want to walk over to Starbucks or Noodles or something and then head back to the bus station.
There's also the cross traffic from people getting off on the 75 to transfer to the B,
Right.
because the stop is on the other side, off of like McKee and Fish Hatch.
That could be rerouted though, so that the 75 goes down to Brendan and comes up and parks in the red lane before or after the, that's what I would envision, is the 65 and the 75 would be parked in that red lane as well.
I mean, I agree too, but I don't know if Metro would want that, because that would be a significant deviation. I think time-wise, it would really slow down the 75, but
I think
that's
It would also require a
Maybe I'm
left-hand turn for either of those roads.
a left turn, yeah,
Whichever direction they're coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
which makes it hard, but anyway, maybe I'm wrong. That's just guessing based on no information. No
Previous
expertise.
meeting of this commission, when we talked about this as the turnaround point, the statement was made that this was not intended to be a major point of bus entry or exit. Because I'd asked about traffic before, parking in this area, and I was told, no, this isn't really a place where we would expect a lot of people to board or debark the bus. It's more for charging and for a restroom and the bus to get on its way again. So now it seems like a lot of the conversation is talking about how we make it possible for lots of people to get to the bus at this spot.
Yeah, but we're talking about pedestrians, not a park and ride.
Right.
Yeah, but I think there will be
Your
more
desire that it's only pedestrians, but the
Yeah.
reality is if we make this someplace that we expect a lot of people to get on the bus, many of them will want to do that from their car.
There will be
If this goes straight downtown, they can say, well, I will park and ride at this bus stop.
Yeah, and I there is a ton of parking
Yeah.
at those businesses there. I don't know if the city would ever be able to, it actually
the
wouldn't
city
be
would say
worth-
there's a lot of street parking available.
There is a lot of street
Right.
parking, I live right on Mickelson, so like there's a
And
ton of
if
street
people take
parking.
advantage of that street parking, the neighbors will complain.
But there might be a way to also utilize, there's a ton of parking lots around those businesses that is not utilized.
There's more parking at Hatchery Hill though.
Yes.
And you have the former Benvenuto's is sitting there at vacant right now, unless something's
You
changed.
could raise it and make a park and ride.
There you go.
That is true. I would be just as willing to drive one stop down and park there and get on the bus at different. So, the point is to not drive downtown, not to get
Yeah, I
on
guess
the
it-
exact last stop.
The question is, who will be taking advantage of this particular spot? And there's plenty of people who live within a 10-minute walk of that spot, but then there's also the 2/3 of Fitchburg that is south of McKee Road.
So this is just my perspective, I'm just saying this. I think I would rather see if that is an issue, that we have just absolute tons of cars with nowhere to put them, rather than build a parking lot preemptively and then not have any cars in it. So that's also an issue that this commission has brought up for other things.
Indeed.
I think there's a way to solve it. I mean, it's a good point. I think it's,
Well, I
there
think,
is a lot of.
so I agree.
Any other
First, I think
comments?
on street, second,
All the time.
talk to the businesses and see if you can work out a deal and then
Mhm.
go from there.
Any other comments on Trevorton Pike? Are we at McKee now?
No, this is Cahill, Maine.
Okay, Ross, I have in the copy of these notes I gave you some comments about the intersection of McKee and Fish Hatchery that we can deal with later, that are not specific to BRT, but are specific to restriping that intersection.
Okay.
So that's when I talk about lane line extensions, so that's what that's about.
Okay, I'll take those as comments on general
Yep.
infrastructure and not on this. So this is the Cahill Main stop. This is kind of unique. It is unique in our stops in Fitchburg.
And all of Madison.
Yeah, well, not quite. But basically, the bus here, the station will be in the center of the road. The bus will stop in the driving lane and block traffic while people board and deboard. So that's once every 15 minutes in both directions for hopefully less than a minute. The bus will block traffic. We'll also have to restrict parking. Here, obviously, we can't park cars and expect the bus to go there.
Do you need the space from the parking on the other side as well?
Yes, both sides will be no parking, and both sides the bus will block traffic. It'll
Oh,
be
right, because buses come both
symmetrical.
ways.
Yeah. So yeah, this will involve some reworking of the sidewalk here. The sidewalk is really close to all these buildings, obviously. So just reworking the grades slightly. Probably won't notice it when it's done.
The landlord there is very difficult to get in touch with, and we are trying to get the bike racks that were removed for the sidewalk repair at the left yellow patch replaced with proper bike parking, and we can't find anybody to talk to, so good luck with doing this project. And maybe we could get the bike parking fixed as part of this project, because the yellow concrete that needs to be replaced is where that bike parking is, or at least it's near there.
If I get a good contact, I will let you know, because I will be attempting to talk to business owners all along this route.
Yeah, I'm talking about the landlord. The business owners are easy.
Yeah. Well, I include the landlord. Yeah.
And Ross, to that point, have we heard anything so far about concerns about losing that on-street parking? When I did a Google Street View historical of basically every image that they had going back to it's like 2009, 2007, something like that, that was heavily in use at that time. Is there, I mean, it looks like there'd be enough, on Midge or Coachman here, but would we be hearing concerns about that, and is that an acceptable alternative to have, people park that extra half a block away and cross?
So I do anticipate hearing about issues with losing the 6 or 10 parking stalls in front of these businesses. I do anticipate that being a complaint we get. I think I agree with you that there's extra parking on Midge and Coachman. It's just not directly in front of these businesses. I also plan on having statistics about bus usage and how many passengers this bus will be dropping off right in front of these businesses.
Every 15 minutes.
Well, you could create 1 hour or 2 hour parking too if you.
Not there.
certain areas. No, you can't.
Bus comes every 15 minutes, so.
Oh, no, not on that street. Oh, you're talking about just
on Midge
eliminating.
and Coachman,
Yeah,
you mean?
I was
Yes,
thinking
that's
you should-
another
It
thing.
should be high turnover parking enforced with signs and maybe people.
Yeah. Is there a reason, why did they decide to move it further down the street? Because I know right now it's farther down Cadiz Bend.
So part of it is because, so the new route will not go to that spot that it currently is at. It'll turn and go back onto McKee sooner.
No, it's still going down
It still has to go
Caddis.
down to
Can you
Cadiz
show us on
Bend,
Google
right?
Maps what the route is gonna be?
It's still going down Caddis, but it's just not looping around
It's not doing the full-
Royal Wolf
right now
Sorry, I was thinking
and
that's not-
Coachman.
You're right, that's my fault.
Because I'm just curious, right now it's like where that, we can see the bus
But I
stop.
think it's putting the bus more in a central location where the
Closer to.
sources and sinks are.
I'm not opposed to it, I'm just curious
Yeah.
why.
You couldn't put it there for the current B route because of the loop it's taking from Royal Wolf to Coachman and back to Cahill.
You're right, that's what I was mixing up in my head.
So the
Because right now it
current
doesn't-
route
doesn't
would
go
have to
here.
loop all the way around Caddis to Cahill to use that as a stop, even though that might be preferable from ped traffic standpoint.
I guess before we move on here from this station, I have just kind of a general question about this routing. And I don't want this to sound as if I'm opposed to this by any means, because I'm not. I'm curious why we have a cutoff off of Fish Hatchery to this, other than the fact that this is kind of a currently well-served area. Because it seemed like the point with the transit redesign was to lean more on coverage or on frequency and less on coverage. So it seems like this stop would be slightly against that goal, which again, I'm not opposed to, but I'm just kind of curious what the rationale is for including a stop there and not at Fish Hatch and Cahill, for example.
So the thought is that, yes, it does kind of go against the kind of efficiency goal of, straight line routes, but it is a worthwhile trade-off because of how little time it adds to the route and how much closer it gets transit users to the apartments and commercial here.
They were to stop
Putting
at
the bus straight down the center of
Yeah.
all that housing and retail is.
It basically is a worthwhile trade-off in my mind and Metro Transit's
It's a lot
redesigners'
easier
mind.
access to those businesses.
Yeah.
than
Whereas if you were on the fish hatchery, then you have nothing but fish on one side and they don't ride the buses.
And there's really not good access to this path.
And if you compare it to High Ridge, if you would just zoom out a little bit, you see that at High Ridge and Breckenridge, you have, you're still in the center of the population, although now you're on fish hatchery. So that would be a reason, for example, to not go farther down Cahill, Maine and turn onto High Ridge to get to fish hatchery, because it better serves the, Sun Valley users.
And that was, kind of gets to another point I had before it's approaching the High Ridge Trail and Fish Hatch Station, so if we're moving our way north, it's kind of moving that way, I noticed it looks like, and I think Ross, you mentioned there's gonna be a new signal at High Ridge Trail and Fish Hatch.
Yes.
And that's the only new signal. So would the buses then be making unsignalized left at Cahill and an unsignalized left at Caddis to and from Fish Hatch?
So they would be,
This is signalized.
Okay, so then it would only be an unsignalized left if you're heading north from Fish Hatch to Cahill.
Yeah, and I asked this to Metro a year ago. And
Yes.
they weren't concerned about it at all.
Okay.
But now they've got a light that's at High Ridge, and that's going to introduce gaps into the traffic.
Okay.
and this is all, an important thing to consider is that all of these statements, like, straight lining the routes and making it efficiency based and wanting left turns for buses to be at signals, it's all preferences and, you have to weigh the cost of putting a signal in versus the the cost of having the bus wait for 3 more cars some of the time.
Yeah.
It's all kind of soft requirements.
Absolutely, and you know, there's an exception to every rule. I just wanted to, you know, kind of understand what the exceptions were, and you know, kind of what the thought process was. Not that I'm expressing any opposition by any stretch of the imagination.
So,
And I guess, Ross, as you're going through this, if you, from this point forward, if you could also point out where current stops are that are no longer gonna be there? Because
I
we're,
can attempt to do that. I don't know if I will be able to do those off the top of my head without switching back and forth between a bunch of maps.
Yeah, they'll be on Google Maps.
So anything else for Caddis or Cahill-Main, sorry? Okay, then yeah, this is the High Ridge stop. Just,
Now we have full access at that intersection.
yes, so just quick explanation. This will be signalized, we'll be taking out this pork chop. High Ridge will not have left turns.
So you cannot turn from left.
So you cannot turn left from Fish Hatchery onto High Ridge.
Okay, and that explains why that turn pocket was removed.
We've done traffic counts at all these intersections. That's a very seldom used left. And
I've seen
there
there
are,
be close
I do
calls
that
there
about once
too.
a
and
week
I've-
to go to Fitchburg Family Pharmacy.
there are also, there's another signalized intersection just to the south at Caddis that you can make a left and still get onto High Ridge Trail. So, and that's much more heavily used with people going to, you know, GHC and Pick and Save and everything, in addition to all the apartments, so.
And you would be able to turn left from High Ridge.
Which you cannot currently do,
Fish Hatchery.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we're adding a left, taking away a left.
Right.
But yeah, this is a more normal station, other than that stuff. Center running, you know, all that.
Where's the crosswalk?
So there's not currently a crosswalk. The crosswalk will be on the
Look for
south
the yellow
side of
patches.
High Ridge.
But it's not really shown crossing the street, it's just.
Right,
It
this
is on
is,
the pavement sheet.
right, this is the site plan, which doesn't show pavement marking, but it shows everything else.
Shows the old
the-
pavement mark.
the stop lines for the traffic is gonna be pretty far back from the intersection. That'll be a kind of a change for people.
Yes, it will be. I don't think we have that shown anywhere. Yeah, we don't have stop bars shown, so. But that's
Well,
a
show
good
me
point,
where
that
they would
crosswalk.
approximately be, right about the front edge of the red block, right?
They'd be closer to the crosswalk than that,
Okay.
but somewhere in between those two, right, wherever my cursor is. So. All right, I can move on to next one here. This is did I miss a? Okay. Why do I have a traceway? Oh, this is just showing pavement marking for some of these left turns into driveways. So I guess if anyone has any questions about.
It looked like they were removing the driveway that turns into Fitchburg Ridge strip mall.
So they are not removing that driveway. That is in the plan set on the website, but that is a driveway that in the 2020 Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction, the city agreed to not remove, so we won't be removing it now.
Okay, so the one I'm talking about is not the bank one, but the one closer to Dairy Queen.
Right.
And so you can go in from either side, but when you come out, you must turn right and go southeast, right?
This one?
Yep. So that one will not be removed, that left turn lane from the northeast bound?
Correct.
Okay. But you're saying that the plan sheet show it being removed?
Correct.
Okay.
And that is incorrect.
Okay. All right,
Sorry.
so we're back to
Yeah.
status quo on that,
Yep.
except for red stripes.
So this is the Post Road stop. This is on the north side of the intersection. More asphalt is being redone here. The orange is redone asphalt. The blue is new concrete. Yeah. Questions, comments about this one?
So it's on the side of,
It's
It's-
right at the gas station.
it's right by the gas station, okay.
Mobile station. Are
Just seems like
these,
more people crossing this post road.
this is a general thing for all the stations. The crosswalk that feeds the ADA pad at the
Oh,
station,
there, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the ones that are.
those crosswalks are all 10-foot wide
So it's
and
more-
suitable for bikes, right?
Yes.
People walking
Yeah.
on bikes.
Yep.
Yeah,
They're all 10-foot wide.
yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
And just for clarification, the location like north or south side of the intersection on a lot of these was determined by the grade difference between the southbound and northbound sides of the road. If you know, going down Fish Hatchery, sometimes the median is tilted, about 30 degrees.
Yeah,
It's really hard to put a station where there's that much grade difference.
yeah.
So
So,
this worked out well then, because the Valley View Apartments are on on the north side of that intersection, so.
So Ross, is that yellow path on what's kind of the bottom of this image, that would be the eastern edge of the road, is that going to be wider than the current sidewalk? Is that going to be more the width of like the path on the west side of the road?
I am not sure how wide this
That's,
is.
yellow is, and the legend is concrete, so I would
Yeah,
imagine
this-
it's still gonna be.
This is
the
redone
sidewalk.
sidewalk. I can give you
Right.
length
And
on
so you
it.
can see that the crosswalk is 10-foot wide, so it looks
Oh,
like
yeah.
that might be 8 or 6 foot wide.
I can tell you in a second.
That's cool.
This is 6 feet. So what's there right now, I'm fairly sure is 5 feet, so this is a foot wider.
I don't know if it's within the scope of this project. We've heard about concerns about the bike lanes. I don't know if this is an opportunity to add a wider shared use path on both sides.
So we did look at that, it's very difficult. This spot isn't that hard to do it, but as you get further north, it gets more difficult,
Okay.
so.
More pedestals and junk.
So this is a small thing, but the bus shelters, there's one right there.
Yeah.
Is that something that can be repurposed and put to a
Yes.
different area? Okay, we
Yep.
can just move it.
Yep, we've done that before.
Many times.
All of these on Fish Hatch, yeah, we'll tear out the concrete and put the shelter in a different spot.
I'm glad they can be moved,
But
that's
we won't
great.
recycle the concrete, but new concrete.
If you're looking for places, I've got my morning stop. I'll give you the list.
We could use more bus shelters.
Yes. Mark also, just for side note, Mark, we have 7 that Mark has been trying to get put up before it snows. We've obviously failed at that now, but it's on the list to do.
That's not much.
Yeah.
It's a person, yeah.
Okay, this is another one of the turn lanes that was being removed on the plans but will not be removed,
Okay.
so.
Let me see where you are.
This is between Post and Ochala. So that's this driveway.
Okay.
And that one won't be removed because the new development that is being talked about for there.
We'll
needs
reorganize
it.
all of that.
Yeah,
Bowman Plaza.
Yep.
7-story.
so in order to not harm development on our hopefully transit-oriented development corridor, thought we'd leave it. Now we are getting into the big one, which is Greenway Cross.
Okay, this is my next comment.
Yes, so I think we'll start at the actual intersection, then we can go south a little bit,
Okay.
just so this makes more sense.
So my suggestion here is that this is one of the widest crosswalks in the city, and it's even wider because it's diagonal. And what if it were to come straight south from the northern curb ramp, and everything on the BRT station moved left on the diagram to accommodate that? What would be the harm of that?
That would potentially, so this intersection was obviously very recently redesigned in 2020. This was all installed. That might potentially need a new traffic signal mast to go on the close side of the road, because you're moving that stop bar so far south because you're moving that crosswalk.
Okay. Well, let me just make that suggestion for consideration, and then not in Fitchburg, the same thing occurs at the intersection of Fish Hatchery and Park, that it appears that you could shorten the crossing distance by moving the BRT station toward Fitchburg, but the ripple effects are unknown to me, but I would just like that to be considered before it's completely discarded.
If I could piggyback off of that, would there be concern then, because if the crosswalk is basically between those two red vertical lines there, would that make it potentially harder for folks who are driving on Greenway Cross and making that right to south on Fish Hatchery? Was that a consideration for why it's diagonal versus kind of straight up and down on there, that it might be harder to see and somebody could start making that turn and be going faster and hit a pedestrian?
I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, that's one of those examples where the corner is really kind of designed for people whipping around there fast. What's the right turn on red situation along the corridor, Ross? Is right turn on red being removed from any of these intersections?
Not currently. We've discussed leading pedestrian intervals and stuff like that.
So this would be a
not
candidate
necessarily
for
no
removing
right
right turn on red because of the site problems that Logan just mentioned. Just sit there, wait for your green, then you can go.
Were you talking about a right turn from
Fish Hatch to
From Greenway
Yeah.
onto Fish Hatch, right?
Yeah, a right turn from eastbound Greenway Cross to southbound Fish Hatch.
Right.
So right where what is that, Starbucks and Park Bank is?
Oh, okay. I was looking at your bottom corner.
this way?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I was,
Because then it's, quite a bit farther than a 90. I was never good at geometry, but that's a wider angle.
Yeah.
This is why we like the roads to be at right angle.
Exactly.
I was just on a webinar about older drivers, and I experienced it was a Vision Zero webinar, and I experienced this loss of neck rotation that many people do, and they're talking about these acute angles and why it's so rough on older drivers to figure out if anybody's coming from that direction.
Do your exercises.
Any
I
other
feel like that's already happening to me. That gets worse.
Much worse.
any other comments on Greenway and Fish?
Yeah, it's not a station, but could you do you have a slide up for the
I do have that slide.
for the bridge,
I
the
do.
bike lane? Yeah, let's see that.
Just so one last time, any other ones on this intersection before we go to that?
Is the station that is to the north of this in the lane that you use to enter the Beltline being removed?
Yes.
Okay. So does the bus stay in the middle lane as it goes over the Beltline?
So the bus will have to navigate from the center, from the left lane, over to the right as it crosses this bridge.
Oh.
by the time it gets to Badger Road.
Yes, because at Badger Road, which I don't have on here,
That's the next station.
Badger Road, the bus takes a right turn to get to Park Street.
And all into mixed traffic, and the next
So there's a
station is right there.
Here,
I see.
that's the next station north.
Okay.
Is it gonna have one of those lights where the bus gets to go first before rest of traffic goes?
We've talked about that, I'm not 100% sure if it does.
It's not in the 30% plans yet.
That's a conversation with WISDOT.
Okay.
WISDOT is very concerned about traffic and the ramps getting onto the belt line here. So we're making some concessions for that. But basically, Metro Transit thinks there's enough length here for the bus driver to be able to make that, to get over 2 lanes in that time with no issues. Yeah.
So, yay for this.
Yep, so this, just as kind of a context explanation, coming southbound on Fish Hatchery Road, there are bike lanes. And obviously, right now, they continue into the bus and bike shared lanes. This was a change we made, knowing that the center lanes would not be marked for bikes and that we would be hoping bikes would use the existing path on the west side of Fish Hatch. So this is basically making it easier for bikes to come down the bike lanes coming southbound and then get into this multi-use path, which right now is just a sidewalk here. So this would basically give an area for you to come in and then get on the path and continue south.
So there's, the existing crosswalk there would be removed in favor of a multi-use crosswalk?
Yes.
Okay. So this works very well for southwestbound people because they're in the near bike lane. If I am northeastbound on my bike, well, you want me to be in the multi-use path. All right, and so I'm coming up to the multi-use path. How do I get into the northeastbound bike lane on the Fish Hatchery Bridge?
You'd cross at this crosswalk.
Okay, will that crosswalk be enhanced?
We don't show it being enhanced right now.
Okay, may I make a different suggestion that you instead have me cross at the at Greenway Cross? So there would be signage that would say, so I get into that bike lane that will be preserved through that stretch. Yep, and head north. We got a similar situation where the bike lanes stop on McKee Road around Commerce Park Drive and Seminole. If you are going east on the north side or west on the south side in the multi-use path, you get to a point where the multi-use path ends and you're faced with a one-way bike lane coming at you. And in those situations, I think that there's a sign that says, that we need a sign that says to continue east, cross at the crosswalk. And I think we need that sign here, and there's no such thing in the MUTCD, but I think we need that.
And there's no such thing as, there's just not enough width on the bridge to continue that multi-use path up to Emile and Ann Street.
Correct, that would take modifications to the bridge, which are very far outside the scope of this project.
Okay. Yeah. One other thing, if you would pull back just a tad, I would renew my request, if not sooner, as part of this project, we need bike lanes on the front of, on the frontage road from the north end of the multi-use path around to the Cannonball path, where people can take that as an alternate to the Fish Hatchery Bridge. And in fact, they may be going west. But those bike lanes start right now at Coho Street, just off the left. You might not have a, yeah. So they just had a new project and resurfaced that whole thing and striped it up to Coho Street. And those bike lanes are continuous now from Coho Street all the way to the Verona Road, where they wrap down the frontage down to Summit Avenue. So it would be a great improvement at a small cost. Part of it is City of Madison, but I'm sure that we can get them to do that if they already did it up to Coho Street and we do it up to the city limits, which is where your cursor is. Right here. So that's on the notes I gave you. And I have nice connection from Fish Hatchery Greenway to Bike Lane. Also in that stretch, just south, we have new path etiquette signs that were put up.
Somewhere in here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one there and one down by Greenway, just north of High Ridge Trail,
Right.
that were not on the existing sign graph sheet. And I don't, those are pages 127 and 130 of 167. And I don't know if that's material, but I wanted to mention it. And the signage diagrams were supposed to show existing and moves or removals.
They don't right now.
Good.
It's generally
So
kind of
later,
surprised they included those sheets, honestly. Usually
Yeah.
I don't include them until 90%.
okay, but later they will show the new signage.
Yep.
Very good. That's all my comments.
One quick question, the ramp and the frontage road, that kind of curve to the bike path there a little bit farther northeast. If the way that was being proposed, it looks like that curve would stay and then the new path would kind of bend into it. Do we expect the predominant movement to be to the frontage road? Because if the predominant movement were coming from Fish Hatch, it seems like it would make more sense to have that be kind of the straight through and then have it almost tee in if you're exiting to the frontage road.
I think we can look at straightening that out, yeah.
Not that this is, not that that's much of a sharp curve by any stretch, but.
Yeah, I'm conflicted by that. I'm thinking that if we can get those bike lanes on the, because I know people that are coming south and they come over the fish, they come south and they want to go south on Fish Hatchery, but to take a more comfortable route, they take the Cannonball over the Cannonball Bridge and then take the Cap City back to Fish Hatchery just to avoid all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that there might be a lot of demand to get over to the Cannonball.
We can look at that. So, any other comments on this? Or any of this?
It's exciting.
Did you get what you were looking for?
Yes.
Good.
And then some?
Always. Well, we thank you for bringing that to us. That brings us to future agenda items, which we've already accumulated 7B. And we also have the, for January, and we have the draft Vision Zero resolution coming back hopefully in February, if workloads all permit. Are there any other future agenda items that we should be talking about?
I thought of this, which was really a staff question, but I thought of it after staff question. That is whether all of the painting of the lines on the resurfaced roads is done now.
No, it is not. We're battling the weather for that. Generally, we need 45 degrees and rising to put epoxy paint down. And that's getting difficult. We're trying to get it all finished before the end of the year, but
Saturday, get them up.
yeah, that Saturday and Sunday are the days we're targeting for it, so.
Well, Tim had said at the Board of Public Works meeting that it would likely wait until spring for the crosswalks and the bike symbols.
I think he's right that it likely will, but we're trying to get
Cross our
it done
fingers.
sooner.
There, now we don't have to have it as a future agenda.
Okay. No, staff report annex.
Yeah.
Anything else, people? I'm sure we'll think of some things, just mail them to me and Ross, and thank you for sitting out for the full 2 hours tonight. We will meet again on January 9th.
May I make a quick announcement?
Yes.
Just since it's the end of the year and it's been a busy year, I think maybe that's a silly thing to say because it's always a busy year in Fitchburg. But I just wanted to acknowledge Ross for your outstanding work this year. I think that the traffic engineer might be one of the most difficult positions in the city of Fitchburg, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of really challenging roles, but you do a ton for the city, and I know you're still relatively new to the role, but you're doing an outstanding job. And I think I speak for all the committee members when I say that. So anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge you for a great year, and thank you for all your hard work.
I brought cookies one time, we should do that.
January.
Okay, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.